Welcome to Snakes and Otters, a pointless discussion of eternal questions. Get ready, we're about to live in your head rent-free. Hello, Otterites. Welcome to episode 126. I am Martin.
And I'm Robert.
And I'm Francis.
And this is our pop culture episode, and of course, in Halloween coming up, what else could it be but something horror-related, and this time, vampire stories.
Vampires, yes.
So, movies, of course, Bram Stoker, TV shows. We might even talk about Twilight.
Oh, God. Yes, we have to. It's kind of like a hoop we have to jump through. Save that a little bit for down the road, though. That's evolution-wise, that's further. That's more
kind of
recent.
a hoop with a, flaming dog turd in the middle of it. But hey.
I was going to say.
Well, yeah. I mean, that might be a little disrespectful to the flaming dog turd. But,
you did that. You realize, of course, that Stephanie Meyer is a gozillionaire because of that series.
And I applaud that she was able to become a, as you put it, gozillionaire.
Yeah.
Based on such tripe.
Well, that a lot of the discussion about her is the fact that the writing in that, we're all about good craft, folks. This does not rise to that. From all that I've read, I have not read them. And for those who love them, they absolutely love them and cannot take any criticism of them. So if you're a Twihard first person out there, hold your ears. You're probably not listening to us anyway. The writing is subpar. It's really very squishy and gushy and...
the vampire equivalent of 50 Shades of Grey.
Absolutely. Well, in fact, 50 Shades of Grey is meant to be a derivative of that, yes.
Well, since we were talking about the Twilight, I couldn't go in the direction it was meant to go. But you're right. 50 Shades is the Twilight version of S&M.
That's right, exactly. And that's because
if that dude lived in a trailer, they should be getting him arrested.
Well, that's that's correct. And I'm sorry, but somebody that's sitting there and watching a woman sleep, that's as creepy as it gets. And yet, that's kind of one of those ooh and ah moments in that series that you hear a lot about.
Well, it's one of those weird things, and honestly, the sexiness of vampires it's so weird because the vampires we grew up with were not like that. But it's like the whole Harley Quinn Joker thing.
Yeah,
there are people on the internet who think, "Oh, that's so romantic." He abused her!
Very much so. That's right.
It's an abusive relationship.
Very much so. And
it is not something to aspire to, people.
And that's kind of one of the criticisms around the Twilight thing. But you raise a very good point on that. Vampirism has always had a erotic subtext to it. And that is part of one of the reasons that it persists so much.
Yeah, well, that I think that even originates with Stoker.
That's correct.
But even carries through things like Hammer films, which I know you enjoy a great deal. But it's much more subliminal and submerged.
That's all you could get away with at the time.
Yeah,
right.
But it is supposed to be a feature of the Dracula character, the main vampire character, is that he has this seductiveness to him.
Yes, he's suave, debonair.
Well,
but he's an older man. He's not taking his shirt off all the time.
But it is. He has something that draws others to him.
There is a serious sexual mystique that goes with vampirisms because think about it. It's penetrative. I mean, he penetrates with his teeth. I mean, you've got the oral and you've got the penetrative stuff. It's all that subtext is all there.
Yeah.
And then you've got the
and he's never going after the guy.
No, that's correct.
Except to get him out of the way.
It's correct.
Always
the stories are always written around, and it's a male fantasy, and yet women love
female fantasy.
That's correct. Women love it too, and there's Christopher Lee was a great example of the sexy vampire in the 50s. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's one of the Hammer movies, Dracula, Prince of Darkness, which I think he did like 7. This is like I think it's the third. It's the second one with him, but it was because there was one they did without him. But there's one. He doesn't utter a single line in the entire movie.
Really?
He says nothing and carries the sheer terror of the character without ever speaking.
Now that's good filmmaking.
That's great filmmaking, and that's a hell of an actor, which we know.
Yes.
Christopher Lee's one of our favorite guys. We love him a lot. He nails it so much so. He and Hammer had a long relationship along with Peter Cushing, who we also love.
Yes.
And Peter Cushing played Frankenstein in their Frankenstein series, and yet Christopher Lee played the first monster in the first Frankenstein. Believe it or not, that was their first. That was their first movie.
And Cushing plays
Van Helsing.
Van Helsing in a lot of vampire
in fact, that second vampire Dracula movie they made, it was Brides of Dracula. Christopher Lee's not in it. Dracula is dead, but he has progeny that are out there that Peter Cushing carries the lead with that story. It's not a bad movie, actually.
Yeah. Yeah.
But they realized, well, the real money here, folks, is in vampire himself, the king of the vampires, Vlad himself. And that's when they brought him back for Dracula, Prince of Darkness, and they just kept making several. Taste the Blood of Dracula. They would kill him, and then they would disintegrate him, and then they'd reintegrate him, and they just kept churning him out.
Yeah. So, vampires have been a thing for a really long time. So,
yes, long before Bram Stoker wrote his book.
Right. So, the origin does go back to the historical figure, Vlad the Impaler.
That's right.
Vlad Dracul, Vlad the Dragon. It was a real-life Wallachian or
Transylvanian is kind of what we talk about now. That's modern
ruler, medieval ruler, who really did put people on spikes to kind of wall off the kingdom a little bit.
That's right. Yeah, he was
really did impale people.
It's going to keep people from visiting.
Yeah.
It's going to take you off the tourist destination list.
Yes, it will.
And he also did fight against the Muslim hordes, too.
Yes.
There's complicated.
Yes, it is a medieval Christianity post-Crusades fight against the Ottomans,
That's right. And I use that term, Muslim hordes, very deliberately, because that's how he viewed them. Yes. That's what they were called at the time. So there was a whole mystique around that.
Your ability to hold the throne of these places all throughout the Carpathians.
That's right, because it's very mountainous. It's very
isolated. Whereas, the Balkans.
Yeah.
So your ability to hold your throne in the Balkans and Carpathians is based on, are you effective in holding off the Turks, the Ottomans? Because we don't want them here. Right. This is the gateway. They serve as the gateway.
That was no small factor in how many of the emperors were chosen for the Holy Roman Empire, because the gates of Venice or Vienna are basically considered that's the last bastion.
That's right.
If they get past there, Europe is open to them.
That's right. And we could probably go down a rabbit hole. I think we're
but
that's starting to.
Yes,
but that's where the
point
basis.
Being, it starts with these tales of this ruthless Muslim fighter holding his throne, not always successfully. He gets deposed at least once, right?
Right, yeah.
And comes back and then gets
about that. That's not
so
bad.
There's some reality to it, but also then the other part of the reality is, there's times when you're not sure somebody's dead.
And that's the other part that goes into this mythology. That's not
superstition.
There's a superstition of corpses that were buried that there would be floods. They would be, and this is where a lot of these stories come from, where they would their teeth would appear elongated when they see the corpses. Yes. That's the canine teeth, and that was just the way the skin would shrink, and there would be blood around the mouth, which they would see when there would be corpses that exhumed for whatever reason, natural disasters, stuff like that, and that's where this the undead idea came from, and they took Vlad Tepes, this evil bloodthirsty ruler, and married all this stuff together, and the whole vampire mythology grew out of that.
Yeah.
And this runs over centuries, and it's meant to explain, because for whatever reason, here's the underpinning of that. We have to, it's a perversion of the Christ story, of the resurrected, the glorious resurrection. This is what if there was a resurrection that wasn't glorious? And that's kind of an attempt to say, this is, if God raised Christ being God, I'm not getting into that, but if did that resurrection, what would the devil do? If Christ is to save us, what would the devil do to damn us? And that's where all this stuff comes back around with these anecdotal stories of things that were being found later. Mental illness figures into this when people would have, for whatever reason, they would attack people, bite them, and things like that. All of this churns together to over centuries to create this mythology that Bram Stoker kind of collected for the first time.
Stoker coalesces sort of this
this
idea.
vampiristic,
Yeah.
And he imposes a lot of the eroticism on it.
Yes.
I don't want, that's kind of him.
Yeah.
If you
But
read,
in the same way that we talked about with Shelley and Frankenstein, being also a story rooted not just in mythology, but in a particular Christian outlook.
That's correct. Very much so.
Stoker's the same way. And that's why a big part of these stories continue to endure.
Yeah, because Van Helsing
even beyond.
Yeah, Van Helsing is the St. George figure come to slay the dragon. It's a very Christian mythology. Dracula is this ultimate evil that preys upon humanity and must therefore be destroyed, and it makes a hell of a story.
Yeah.
And it's the book sold a gazillion copies, and all of a sudden, once film develops, then you have things like Nosferatu and some of those early vampire movies in the teens and 20s. Nosferatu was it still holds up. If you get a chance to see it, it's a silent movie. That's kind of a build around this sort of thing. And all of a sudden the public says, what? And that's when the folks at Universal...
It really has legs when it becomes film.
That's right. Really because you don't get a lot of vampire fiction. Other than Dracula, there's not a lot through there. It was the film that carried this.
At that time.
It came later.
Until Twilight.
No, before
No, Anne Rice really repopularized it.
Yes, she did. That's right. Although it never went away completely. But it was
But as far as a book thing, and coming back with fiction, Anne Rice deserves a lot of credit for sort of
she does. But the movie that really made vampires a thing was, of course, Bela Lugosi's Dracula. The 30s. I think it was 30s.
I thought you say Abbott Costello meet Dracula.
That was a
which actually was also Bela Lugosi. The only two times he played Dracula
that's right.
was Abbott Costello and the original.
That's right. Which was a shameless cash grab on Universal's part because all those were because in 1930 they do Frankenstein. In 1932, I think, or maybe it's 33, they do Dracula, and they realize we've got a hit here. And next thing you know, they're churning out these movies, and let's see.
They met all of them. They met the Wolfman. Played by Lon Chaney. I was trying to think of the first name.
Yeah.
And they do The Invisible Man. And then they do multiples.
They realize horror has people will show up. And see, that's kind of what a lot of this is.
But it's Abbott Costello. So it's kind of horror, but kind of not.
But that's correct. That's right. But most of but we kind of get back to this is Frankenstein book, Dracula book, some of H.G. Wells, not a whole lot, but some of that.
Yeah.
Brings in the concept of the horror genre really doesn't start to coalesce until after that. And then when you've got Nosferatu, the movie, and Dracula, the movie, next thing you know, horror is a viable genre.
Well, when you think about
sells.
Yeah, well, when you think about what it is and the themes it deals with, especially something like Frankenstein and Dracula, that would have, and especially if you're going to add the erotic element to Dracula, that's going to be a hard sell in the 19th century.
That's right. That's why they had to dumb a lot of that down. The subtext is still there, and it's still all those movies, they still hold up. The original ones. They both morphed after about 3 or 4 movies into the shameless cash grab.
Yeah,
because that's where it went, and kind of about at the end of the war, that kind of we're kind of done with this. Let's go on to something else. And there were the cheap horror movies of the 40s and the 50s. But the source material with both Frankenstein and Dracula is public domain at this point. So Hammer Studios in England says, well, we can do this, and we can't do what Universal did. It can't look like that. But the source material, we can do this. And so they reinvigorated the genre for the B-movie industry. Because Hammer movies were pretty cheap.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but they were color, and most of those censorship of the 30s and 40s has been relaxed a lot, even in the 50s, surprisingly enough, because this is England. The United States, you've got comic books that are, seduction of the innocent and all that sort of stuff going on. In England, they're saying, forget that. And you got glorious blood everywhere in those Hammer movies. I mean, Horror of Dracula, the first one, it's called simply Dracula in England, and there's blood everywhere. Rich, red, because it's color.
Which we do not get at all in the U.S.
That's right. Yeah.
Even when you have some color versions of that, you do not get, as Bugs Bunny called it, spurting blood.
That's right. Exactly, and that's shift of gears from where the Universal movies were. They kind of went away, and then you've got Hammer. And then in the 60s, you've got Barnabas Collins, in many respects. Dark Shadows.
Yeah,
which was,
well, and of course, with everything breaking down by then you really get to show whatever you want in these films.
well, and Hammer's still making movies by this.
Yeah.
They make them into the mid-70s with Christopher Lee. And all of a sudden, you've got nudity in some of those movies.
Yeah.
They're meant to be B horror drive-in flicks.
Drive-in movies, yes.
But, you're starting to see that sort of stuff. You would never have seen that before.
Yeah.
But there's still that sexual subtext in all of this. I mean, one of the Frankenstein movies was, and Frankenstein created woman. And she's naked most of the time. That I wish I could tell you the name of the actress. But and you get a lot of that sort of stuff. It's really in the 70s where all of a sudden the wheels finally come off. Same time the comic books that you can take, the comic code is gone, and it's around that same time.
Comic code was around, but they just ignored it.
Yeah, it was once the break was made, and this was around the, and Barnabas Collins had a lot to do with it because it was a phenomenon in the late 60s, and it was very, very sexual subtext because you're getting to see a long form storytelling on film. Which you don't, before this is mostly movies where, the vampire gets it in the end.
Right, he's a bad guy.
That's right. He comes back again, but, because you got all sorts of crazy sequels, but in the end, that's how it happens. And Dark Shadow says, well, no, he's too popular to kill. They were going to originally kill off Barnabas Collins at some point. And they said, well, no, he's why people are watching. Our ratings have gone through the roof. We've got to figure out a way to rehabilitate him. And so became the reluctant vampire theme, and that's kind of where we've been ever since then.
Yeah, because then I guess you would get into what Blade.
Blade is some of that. That comes from the comic book, of course, which was you can't, even though they killed Dracula, I don't know how many times in the comic.
Yeah,
books.
he's never permanently dead.
He's never permanently dead.
Even though you see them separate the head from the body and burn both, he still somehow comes back.
It never fails. That's right.
It never fails.
Which is the same problem that Dark Shadows had. He's too popular. We've got to keep stories going. Because both of those are long-form storytelling forms. So next thing you know, people are picking up on that. You've got vampire movies and series and all sorts of stuff.
Well, a lot of what drives, I think, the fascination with horror is it's two-part. It's the supernatural in some way. Mm-hmm. But in many of them, there's this taste of the forbidden. Mm-hmm. So whether that's erotic or some other form. So like with Frankenstein, you've got this quest for immortality.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that's not really, nobody really looks upon that with favor until you actually do it, of course. Then everybody go crazy for it.
Right.
But it's seen as wrong, especially the way Frankenstein goes about it.
And it's right. And that's how Shelley wrote it originally.
Right.
Yeah.
Because, digging up the dead bodies and all this, it's, grave robbing is not exactly high on the list of things people want you to do. Yeah. So there's that bit of titillation in that, and no pun intended for the later movies, but there's that always will draw people, that little bit of eroticism and that titillation of some kind, that little bit of bad boyness in whatever form. Do somebody who's supposedly a hero, has good ideas, good motives, doing something bad.
Right, because he's handsome. He's always, Christopher Lee in particular, but he's a attractive person, and that's where that whole and I think television and movies and books all sucked into that, thinking, wow, this sexy vampire that can give me immortality with a bite.
The best sexy vampire, though, will always be the one from Bitten. I think it was Jacqueline Bisset.
Oh my gosh, no, it's Lauren.
Lauren Hutton is
Lauren Hutton.
Lauren Hutton.
Yes, that's right.
Once Bitten with Jim Carrey.
Yeah, that's what it was. Once Bitten. Yes.
Yeah, that's and there's all sorts of other movies that.
Cleavon Little too, right?
Ooh, I think so. And you're talking Once Bitten, not Love at First Bite. Which was
George Hamilton.
That's right.
That was a great one.
These are fun movies. And see, you realize the vampire genre or subgenre of horror has got legs all its own.
Well, I think in those cases, it's not that it has legs. It's that it's become such a normative part of the culture, you can make fun of it.
Okay.
Which really is one of the reasons I think vampires have become what they have, because vampires are no longer scary. They've been around too much.
Yeah. Dracula Dead and Loving It.
Yeah. I mean, it's just not. It's hard to scare people nowadays. With movies
Really?
and books.
Well,
I think it is.
I think you're right.
I think that's why you have zombies have become such a big thing because the decaying body thing. That's gruesome and terrifying.
Well, yeah, because instead of one undead person that still looks handsome running around, you've got hordes of mindless, decaying flesh.
Yeah,
that's our dopamine hit.
Yeah, you get to throw in gore and scare.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, because we've been desensitized to the old, we've got to move. It's almost addictive. Yes.
And so when you look at the Anne Rice books, and later the True Blood stuff.
Right.
The books, which I read a bunch of those to see what it was all about, and it's not really that great. I mean, but it's the same kind of thing. You've got this. They're sexy, so the danger is no longer you're going to lose your life. It's the danger is going to be you might fall in love. I mean, it's and so it's not really that dangerous anymore in the sense that it's forbidden love. And
it's almost misogynistic too.
Oh yeah,
very much so. Which I'm surprised that that it hasn't been tackled more in print and on the internet and all that stuff. It seems to be given a pass, but there's nothing admirable about this type of thing.
Other than Lauren Hutton, there's never a hot vampire babe preying on young men.
There's probably exceptions to that, but you're right. I can't see.
Yeah, I can't think of it.
But do people fall into this goth/vampire lifestyle? Are often young women.
Yes.
Does it give them a sense of power to adopt these personas?
Probably.
Power over men.
It's
power over your existence, at least.
It's probably dangerous for us to speculate on this because none of us have been goth. Although I've listened to a lot of goth music. Thank you, Susan the Banshees. But she's has been called the Queen of Goth, but she's not hardcore goth, or she wasn't when she was called that. So there could be some of that power over men. It could just be that yes, we're all individuals. As we go around dressing like one another and saying and doing and thinking the same things. So, it's a way to rebel because it is so vastly different from the norm. The black lipstick, the dyed black hair, everything in black, putting the piercings through every part of your body. That was more of a later thing. Mm-hmm. So, it's a little bit of rebelliousness, I guess.
Cry for
attention. But it is coming from this... this
vampire
thing, because
there's probably some of that.
It kind of moves from, you can move from that into this hardcore vampire adoration type stuff.
Yeah, well, there are even groups that drink each other's blood with this type of thing. I mean, they're out there. I mean, take anything that you want. Human beings can pervert it ever how they want to. So I'm not sure that's endemic to this. I think it's just a convenient.
Well, we will also sexualize anything too.
That's correct.
So even if vampires didn't have an erotic context originally, we would have added it by now.
Yeah, and we did because Twilight is the obvious one.
But I think it was before that.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Barnabas Collins started a whole lot of it, at least in modern understanding. There was the really good, it was on Sci-Fi Channel for years, Canadian TV series called Forever Night, which was about a reluctant vampire that had been living for 1,000 years and was trying to, repay society for his sins. And said it was excellent. If you can find it, it's still out there. This was, and I told because I would watch that a lot when my kids were little, not with them usually, but they knew of it. And when they became tryhards, because they were of the age when that came about, they were young ladies, and they were just all into that. And I'm thinking, you do realize that this was done 20 years earlier, much better actually.
Yeah.
Forever Night was of course it had a whole...
Twilight captures that angsty stuff.
That's
I don't want to denigrate anybody's particular
tastes,
or maybe, but personal experiences of Well, like I said, taste, that's one thing, but I don't want to denigrate anybody's personal experiences of life and what forms of entertainment they use to as an escapism or how they can identify with that.
Because obviously it was popular. There's no
Right.
doubt about that.
But yeah, I mean, Twilight, for all its popular success, it's a trashy novel. I mean, it's a I mean, you hear people reading trashy novels. Well, yeah, this is like the ultimate trashy novel.
People have read and loved trashy novels for
Right.
decades. So
right.
What was different about this? And it wasn't just the genre. I don't think. I'm not sure.
Well, I think the internet drives a
on
lot of this. I think the internet helps drive a lot of this stuff because you can connect more. You can get more feedback. You can, it's like how the 50 Shades stuff. Started out
word of mouth hits much stronger that way. Word of mouth becomes international rather than
community. And fan fiction picks up very quickly. Yeah. And all this, and I mean that's what 50 Shades was.
It was fan fiction, with, on the Twilight world, and yet Stephanie Meyer somehow she struck gold with this, and I'm still there's been a lot written on it. I wish I understood it better. I've had friends who were just one of my daughters. They were really into this, and I had other adult lady friends that said, "Oh, absolutely, I was, this is a thing." And
was it Team
Edward and Team Jacob?
Edward and Jacob.
That's right. It was. So I'm wondering, Stephanie Meyer apparently is not a very good writer, as in sentence structure and creativity, but she obviously came up with a plot pretty damned popular, and I've often wondered. What it is that she struck that resonated. I've not been able to get any fans, and hey, Twilight fans out there, we don't mean to run you down or your like. Explain it to us. What is it about this that was so much more than anything else?
Well,
that made you want to spend your money on it.
Well, think about it this way. It's a lot like just a slightly older young adult fiction because all the characters are truly young adults.
Yeah.
As opposed to typical YA, which often tends to be teens, younger teens.
Because the story does start at high school, basically. Right. And I think part of it is...
And how sad is it that your vampire protagonist and your werewolf one are still in high school? How old are they?
Thousands of years, hundreds of years, whatever.
Whatever it is. And you still haven't graduated?
Part of it is that there's a regular person in the center of the story.
Yes.
I'm sure that was something where lots of, especially young women, could identify with.
And there's the love triangle.
I think you've nailed a lot of that there. And young adult fiction is all over that stuff.
Yeah. There's a young woman who lives with her father, goes to school, feels a little isolated, and now here's this gorgeous man
who pays attention to her. In a rather creepy way.
Doggone it, he's a vampire. And doggone it, the other guy's paying attention to me as a werewolf.
Yeah.
So, however, a recent vampire series that I think goes in a different direction that I like is Underworld.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yes, I'm glad you mentioned that. Yes, Kate Beckinsale is one of our favorite people, certainly.
Woo-hoo.
She's a wonderful lady. She's consistently working, by the way.
Yeah.
It's something
she's very symmetrical and appealing to the eyeball.
Well, she is. She was she actually was in the hospital recently as we record this, so we wish her the best.
Became ill on a film set.
That's correct. That's right. And every time you turn around, she's doing a new movie. That says something that she's got some, and she pulls it off very, very well. But a lot of her stardom, it wasn't her first big star movie. Yeah. Pearl Harbor was kind of the first of that with Ben Affleck and there. But the Underworld series, the first one in particular, was a total original take on the vampire and werewolf mythology that had a huge resonating factor.
Well, and, it didn't hurt that she was the main protagonist there.
Well,
she was very visually appealing.
She was, that's correct, but didn't have to be that way.
Well,
just a lot of.
But that's what makes. But I think that's what makes this different, though, because it is almost impossible for a female action movie to get made. I mean, look how long it took to get Black Widow.
Well, yeah, I mean, Wonder Woman was a risk when they made it.
Right, it was a risk.
They weren't going to do that.
Right. And, I mean, they did Captain Marvel, which I'm shocked they did that before Black Widow, but, they did that for, she's incredibly popular in the comics. So.
Right. And a lot of it was the political pressure of why haven't you made a movie with the female superhero lead?
But you still don't do it with Black Widow. It makes you wonder if ScarJo and Disney were having issues before this recent break.
It's weird because Scarlett Johansson is probably the most well-known woman in the world. You
I mean, she can carry a movie.
That's correct.
She's done it
many times, so it's not a money thing.
Yeah,
it's something else.
And she's done action.
Right. And yet, Kate Beckinsale did it phenomenally well with Underworld. Which was
it's one of the few examples. You just don't see it. So it was a risk.
The rule, maybe.
Well, it had to have been a major risk to have this female-led action movie about vampires and werewolves.
Mm-hmm. I'm not sure that there was a huge amount of investment in that movie. I don't know what its budget was. It
had to have been a fairly decent amount.
First one, I think it had kind of a limited set of sets, and I think it was filmed in Eastern Europe. So that gave it kind of an authentic look without a huge expense.
Len Wiseman was the director of it. He's very married.
Who pulls that stuff out of his rear end? I don't know.
What?
Did you know the director?
I'm a big fan. I've been a big fan.
We've got all the discs and all.
Absolutely, and it was. I mean, they were able to make 4 sequels. So, I think it's 4 sequels to that movie, which you shouldn't be able to do that with a female action hero, and yet they have. Now, of course, the second one they had a fairly decent sized budget. The third one a little less so. Of course, Kate Beckinsale wasn't in that.
Yeah, she wasn't even in that.
She came back to the other two.
Rona Mitra.
Yeah, I like Rona Mitra. She does a great job. She was in Star Trek Stargate Universe there for a while. She was the Lucian.
Yes, she was the leader.
Yeah, exactly. Guest star. She's done a lot of good stuff.
Yeah,
and yet that still somehow.
Yeah,
I think Len Wiseman deserves a lot of credit, as does Kate Beckinsale.
Yeah, I mean, Underworld is
visually it's powerful.
Yeah, visually very interesting, and there's a detailed mythology to it that made it appealing. Like it
was logical.
Yeah, there was more than just we don't like vampires. There was, or we don't like the werewolves. This battle between the Lycans, and then they start tying it to these was it Corvinus, and
that's right.
All this kind of mythology all the way back in Eastern Europe. So it became appealing because of the details.
I think so.
Well, yeah, it helps differentiate. That's I think one of the things that makes True Blood. Even though I've not seen any of the episodes,
my daughters really love it. They really do. Yeah.
Well, it's got some great actors in it, so that always helps.
And it ran for a long time. It had a good budget. HBO, but they do a good job.
It's a different take on the whole thing.
Very much so.
It is still vampires and werewolves and voodoo and the whole supernatural realm.
Well, yeah.
But it's what if they went public? Because all this stuff is always secret.
Right.
Yeah.
But instead, they go public, and the name of the TV show comes from this synthetic blood.
Yeah.
That, of course, enterprising entrepreneurs seize on. Hey, we can't have you killing people and drinking their blood. How about we make you some fake blood? And so that's what. So then you can literally go into restaurants as a vampire and order True Blood, and it's this fake blood. So it's a different take, where everybody knows vampires exist.
Well, yeah, which is it's a decent change.
Yeah.
Like Underworld was a decent change to this mythos that had, you could say, every so often runs its course.
Well, you can only do a story based on I want to drink your blood so often.
Yeah.
Well,
but that's the linchpin of that good fiction, like we were just talking about with Bernard Cornwell. What if you change this one aspect?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right, and that's how you're able to take this. Which I'm not so sure that the entire vampire mythology hasn't run its course yet again until somebody else comes up with something new and interesting. Because, as you can see, about every 10 to 20 years, something dies and something is resurrected.
Well, everything goes in cycles.
That's right. That's right. As long as you can keep it new and fresh and keep everybody paying attention to the little shiny light.
Well, that sounds like a good place to stop for a moment and bourbonize.
Ooh, that's a good word. Bourbonize. That's right.
Actually, I need to pour because I really don't want to finish the. You didn't finish yours, did you?
I did. I actually poured a little bit more just to make sure I had this right.
Really? You can pour yours into mine.
Oh, you'll finish it?
I'll finish this for you because I did not last episode. I didn't drink Jefferson's, but you guys gave your kind of your less than stellar endorsement to it. and I went ahead and said, "Well, I've kind of got to do it.
You got to
to
do
finish
it. You got to do it.
I am not as opposed to it as you guys are. It's no Basil Hayden. It's okay. It's
Maybe
all
my
right.
taste buds are coming back already.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Because listeners, we've talked about how Martin pulls all these descriptions out of one of his orifices, talking about flavors and hints of this and sense of that. And he says this because he stopped drinking soft drinks. The taste buds are not working.
No, soft drinks will ruin your taste buds.
So I have recently given up soft drinks since I've started drinking coffee.
Exceptionally well with it. I'm thrilled for you, Robert.
I am 10 days into it. Not had a soft drink. I haven't really had any caffeine withdrawal headaches because I drink coffee now. So I have substituted my caffeine. Maybe I don't know how long it really takes. I've heard about a month is what you really need to.
And coffee doesn't have the same effect. It's the sugar, not the caffeine.
Right. It's the soft drinks is that, especially the corn syrup soft drinks.
Uh-huh.
I think really just the sweetness is so much. Your taste buds become so anticipatory of that sweetness. It becomes hard to really differentiate anything else.
And therein lies the fact that it doesn't bother me much because I'm still drinking Cokes like you would believe.
Well, I still drink a lot of sweet stuff. I like my coffee very sweet.
Well, I do too, yeah.
But it's not corn syrup stuff.
Yeah.
Like I use a sugar-free caramel sweetener for my coffee.
In addition to corn syrup, a modern soft drink is heavily sweetened.
Yeah.
I mean, super duper sweetened, even compared to a sugared coffee or something like that. Yeah. I mean, it's a tremendous amount of sugar is in a soft drink.
So that's why the fact that this Jefferson thing doesn't bother me that much.
It could be.
That's what your all's thought is. That might be what we're talking about.
You're not getting the flavor that we were getting,
and don't realize that I'm not getting it.
Yeah.
So therefore,
what are you getting? Do you get just?
It's not medicinal.
It's bourbon.
It's just bourbon. That's right. There's I don't get a lot of oak. I don't get a lot of pine or any of the woodsy stuff that I'll take more of my drink. It's muted. That's not bad.
Yeah.
It's got a bit of an aftertaste.
A little bit.
Yeah. That is not a good one. I mean, they all have a bit of that after effect.
It's mild. It's not.
Oh, see, I didn't think it was mild.
Oh no, I don't have any.
I thought it was pretty sharp.
Oh, it's very sharp to me. I mean, it was like whap, hit me right in the center of the tongue.
Yeah, as soon as you drink it,
with something, and again, there is something to the nose of it.
Now,
and to the
I had ice.
That's just
mine was neat.
Did you have ice?
Both. I did both.
That's right. You did both.
Okay, so that's right. So. Yeah, so it shouldn't make any difference then, because you said you had the same effect.
Well, if yours was, because I just finished yours, if there was a little bit of water to it, that may have watered it down a little bit. But I've been drinking the straight before you.
But you mixed it with it, so it shouldn't have had that much of an effect.
No, not at all. And it's, I'm not seeing it, folks. I'm just not.
It's very interesting. This is why I think we need to do another bourbon episode. We really need to do figure out some experiments to run.
That's right.
And do them.
I mean, there's always super juice.
So it's kind of 2.5 on the Jeffersons.
Yeah.
You just poured Woodford.
Woodford, yes.
And I have just...
The regular Woodford.
Polished off a quick snort of basil, which is really clearing the palate out.
It's always good. Always good.
Yep.
Cool. All right, so that is Bourbon Break. And so where does that leave us?
What else do we have to say, folks?
Yeah, I mean, other than Kate Beckinsale is very awesome, and then vampire movies, of course.
And the movie was good, too.
Yeah, appeal to us. Because there is a subconscious Western Christianity element to these stories.
Good destroys evil, and it's supposed to. And
the resurrection gone bad thing you talked about earlier.
Yeah, Dracula as an antichrist figure.
Very much so. Yes.
So
that's something that's often lost in most of the time in our popular culture.
Yeah, you can't make that overt anymore.
I mean, when you get to Underworld or Twilight, that has been rehabilitated into vampires are people too.
Well, True Blood especially.
Yeah, and that's the whole premise of True Blood.
Yeah, so exactly. But that of course was not where Stoker was.
By no means.
These were These were
And
anti-Christ figures.
Right, and I will mention, because we didn't mention it, and we probably should have, Bram Stoker's Dracula, the movie from 1996.
Very well made.
Gary Oldman.
Yeah.
Yes, that was very good.
That one, if you wanted to put it down into like possibly the best Dracula adaptation, I might have to say that you've got Anthony Hopkins as Van Helsing. Keanu Reeves, I mean, who doesn't love Keanu Reeves? Come on, everything he does, I'll watch.
Keanu Dracula.
That's right. Yeah, but he was Jonathan Harker.
He was Harker.
Yeah, so he had the whole thing through there, and it was very, very well done. I mean, Gary Oldman's another guy that I can watch anything he does.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
He plays the sexy Dracula in 1996, and then plays Winston Churchill in Darkest Hour, wins an Oscar 20 years later.
And don't forget, he played Dr. Smith.
Well, that's correct. In Lost in Space, the movie, which was a little forgettable.
Yeah.
The new Netflix series was really
And Commissioner Gordon as well.
He
right?
played Commissioner
Yes,
Gordon.
excellent Commissioner Gordon.
Very
Very
much
excellent.
so.
The best Commissioner Gordon.
Yeah, he looks like Commissioner Gordon. Yeah,
he does. Yeah, in those three movies, he did a really good job. So,
J.K. Simmons, you're cool, but
Jeffrey Wright's doing it in the next Batman with Robert Pattinson again. Which, believe it or not, it hasn't happened yet, but you can see the trailer, and it's
but the Justice League is J.K. Simmons, right?
Yes, he is. Yeah,
But Gary Oldman,
yes,
he is Commissioner Gordon.
Yes, I would agree. I would agree completely. And
well, Batman is a Dracula motif.
Very much so. That's exactly right.
Yeah.
We didn't even get into that, but you're exactly right.
And you want to talk about the comics? Dracula in various places had a long run. Most especially the wonderful 70-issue run at Marvel.
Right,
In
Tomb of
70s,
Dracula.
Tomb of Dracula.
Yeah, with Gene Colan and
Marv Wolfman.
That's right.
Oddly enough, Marv Wolfman.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. And Morbius is Dracula.
It's a Dracula kind of a
too.
takeoff to that movie. I don't think that's out yet. That they're doing an adaptation.
They are doing a Morbius.
Yeah, it's done. Yeah, definitely. And I'm interested in that. I always liked Morbius, the living vampire, which was a scientific thing where he accidentally creates himself as this creature that's similar to a vampire and calls himself that. Yeah. We've done this over and over and over again because it still has legs. People still keep watching it. There's
something about it that evokes a primordial response, and that's why it gets done over and over.
And I think it is the biting of the neck, the draining of the blood. I think that's that forbidden fruit that's always there. That no matter how you dress it up, that's the one thing that keeps people.
To think that you
back.
could live eternally based on the life force of another.
Well, yes, let's talk about Eucharistic theology. No, seriously.
That's correct.
Yeah.
And again,
it's a perversion of Christian.
It's an anti-Christ figure.
That's correct. That's right.
Yes.
Yeah, it's
living forever as the soulless one, as the undead.
Yeah.
All those things.
It's not the Savior's blood saving our lives. It's our blood saving
his lives.
His life.
Yeah. And thereby condemning us. So it's all about that.
Yes, it's completely the opposite of the Christ story.
Right, exactly. As is Frankenstein for other reasons, too.
Yeah. Well, it's the creator the created trying to become the creator.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
There's a reason they're the classics.
Yeah. Right. Well, that's what I said. It's primordial things are evoked in us because, there are certain things that in our gut, we see as we talked about with morality not long ago. There are some universal things that we have to call moral, and
that's right.
These violate them in some ways.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And that is for whatever. And when you can present it in a way that is either fascinating or titillating, especially, it becomes intriguing because. We want to see the bad guys lose, but we also want to see a really good character. And Dracula, as a villain, he's a really good character.
Very much so. Yeah.
For whatever reason, and all these others, they work on various levels, granted, but they're working with that same source material.
So I think this is a good place to end because I really like the idea of you tie it to the Eucharistic theology of it's the opposite of the Christ story. It is our blood providing eternal life to a
demonic
figure rather than
who is also
saving our
half
lives.
human. See, there's that thing there.
Yes, and of course
half demonic, half human, which is another perversion of the Christ.
Christ figure. Wow, cool, excellent. All right, so what is next, Francis?
Guys, there's 5 Fridays in this month. You know what that means?
We get paid 3 times this month.
Hoopajoo.
Oh yeah, Hoopajoo.
Hoopajoo. Yeah, we're going to do a Hoopajoo next time. It's been a little while since we've done it. Just kind of way the calendar falls.
We do one about every 3 months.
Yeah, that's right. And we think about it sometimes. You know, we really put a lot of work into what our content's going to be. And Hoopajoos is the one that always kind of mess with us the most and also are most fun. And we're going to talk about famous people next time. You know, we do our biographies, our heroes and stuff, to talk about folks. We're going to talk about folks that we've met or that we want to meet. Because some of us, like myself, hasn't met anybody hardly. Although there's a few exceptions to that. We'll talk about
You've met 2 very famous podcasters.
Well, yes, I have. That's exactly right. Yes. So we're going to talk about, some of those folks we really want to meet or have met, and just going to have a fun time with it next time. Join us.
Hope you enjoyed another pointless discussion of eternal questions. Remember, new episodes published every Friday at noon Eastern.
Spread the word. We're on all the major podcast platforms. And leave us a comment or review because that helps others find us.
We're on Instagram, Twitter, as well as our website, snakesandotters.com.
I'm Martin.
And I'm Robert.
And I'm Francis. Join us next week. Same snake time, same otter channel.